Dan Houser just talked to Lex Fridman for 2 hours and 45 minutes. I watched the whole thing, so you don't have to. Here's what actually matters. In this video, I'm going to cover Dan talking about creating Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, what we learned about the future of Red Dead and Grand Theft Auto, and which huge questions finally got answered. My favorite part is actually about Red Dead Redemption 3. Stick around, you're going to want to hear this. I'm Rob Morris, American screenwriter, TV producer, and creator of Vinewood Public Access, the #1 fan-created GTA talk radio station, and I'm here to save you some time. It is 11 o'clock at night on Halloween in Los Santos, and I am staying up late to cover this. You better appreciate it, you bucketheads. Let's get into it. Let's start with the most obvious thing I would imagine you want to know. Should you go and listen to the entire 2 hour and 45 minute video and skip out on this summary? Well, that's up to you. I personally, as a professional screenwriter, got a huge kick out of listening to the whole thing. If you're very interested in how the Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption games were conceived from a writer's standpoint, you should absolutely go listen to the whole thing. Just turn this off and go listen to the whole thing. If you just want to know the highlights and what it means for GTA 6 and Red Dead Redemption 3, stick around. That's what I'm going to talk about. First, let's map out their conversation just a little bit so that if you really want to go look for something in particular, you know where to find it. One of the best parts of this whole podcast, and absolutely the meat of the interview, is how Dan Houser went about creating each of the stories in the Grand Theft Auto series and in Red Dead Redemption. This is something that hasn't been discussed very much. The Housers are famously quiet and have given very few interviews over the years. So for Dan to go on for 2 hours and 45 minutes about the inner workings and writing style of Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, this is a huge deal. They start off by talking about some of Dan's favorite films of all time. If you are a fan of Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, you know that film and television have a massive impact on the story, style, humor, and overall influence of these worlds. I'll also mention that towards the end of the interview, they talk about some of Dan's favorite books. Different influences come out throughout the entire interview. They talk about books, movies, music, things that influence him. And if you really want to wrap your brain around how the Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption universes were built, go to the interview, look at the movies, the TV, the things that are mentioned, the references that he grew up on, and go find them yourself. Watch an episode of Miami Vice. Watch Scarface, Goodfellas, Casino. If you haven't seen these movies, take the time. They are the groundwork and influence for all the games that you love. One of the things that's covered pretty well, though not in direct chronological order in this interview, is Dan's overall relationship to the creation of video games as a career. Dan originally, for those of you who don't know, went to school for geography at Oxford and was overall, pursuing a career as a historian. Sam Houser actually offered his brother the opportunity to get involved in video games, and that story is somewhat told in this interview. Dan had always wanted to be a writer, but didn't have the confidence to start putting himself out there in a meaningful, creative way. Sound like anybody you know? I'm talking about YouTubers and content creators. I thought that was obvious, but then as I said it, I thought maybe not. Anyway, so I think it's important to keep in mind in this overall story of who Dan is and how he made these games, he was 23, 24 years old going into video games, a medium he really knew very little about other than playing some himself, and the inklings and aspirations of being a writer. He would go on to arguably become the most prolific video game writer in history, and definitely the highest grossing. One of the things I found particularly interesting about Red Dead Redemption as far as writing goes, Dan goes into the idea that he grew up on Westerns, watching them with his dad, but when it came time for him to write a Western for work, he actually didn't do a lot of additional research or spend a lot of time watching Westerns. He tried to draw on what he remembered and his past experience, which actually makes a lot of sense because if you play Red Dead Redemption versus Grand Theft Auto, GTA feels very directly influenced and almost satirical with American film, whereas Red Dead Redemption, it feels like there's influence, but it's a truly original story. This is the reason for that. Undoubtedly, one of the biggest questions you have is, did they talk about GTA 6? And of course they did. It's a little less than an hour in, and they did talk about it for a healthy chunk. Primarily, Lex's angle was, what does it feel like to see GTA 6 coming to fruition without your input? What we absolutely did not get is a whole lot of information on a game that he didn't make. Dan Houser did not make Grand Theft Auto 6, and he does not work at Rockstar any longer. So big reveals about GTA 6, when it's coming out, when we get more information, the story, the details, we're not going to get any of that from this interview. So if that's what you're looking for, I hate to disappoint you. However, there was a really big reveal about RDR3, I think, which I'll share in just a second. Another thing that came up quite a bit in this interview is the concept of AI. Whether or not AI will replace game makers, writers, and other creatives, which I thought Dan handled very well by explaining that low-level work is still done by AI pretty efficiently, but it still constantly fails at big new ideas. And as long as people have big new ideas, they're going to be just fine, at least for now. But one of the things that he did point out is that from its conception, GTA 3 was like super low rent AI. The idea was to create a simulation of a city and let players jump into it. There's a beautiful section where he talks about the world living on before you turn the game on and after you turn it off, and that you're sort of a digital tourist in this world. I definitely recommend that you go and listen to that section. One of the things that concerns players about GTA 6 is Dan's departure and how it might affect the story or Rockstar's overall commitment to story-driven characters. At one point in the interview, Dan mentions that there was sort of an internal debate at times as to whether or not to let the worlds be more procedurally generated and based on player behavior, or to have a more concrete linear story built in to guide the player through the world. Seemingly, Dan won most of these arguments because I think anyone can tell you that playing a Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead game is absolutely a story-driven experience. Clearly, that's thanks to Dan Houser. The question that a lot of people have is, are those people who wanted that less story-driven and procedural kind of generated user experience the ones that are shaping Grand Theft Auto 6? We'll have to wait to find out. At one point, Lex asked him very directly, what does it feel like to see this world that you created and worked on over so many years proceed without you? And Dan said this.
I have to ask, is it a little bit bittersweet to say, to not be part, to say goodbye to the Grand Theft Auto world and having to watch Grand Theft Auto 6 released? Or is it more excitement? What's the feeling?
I think it's how would I describe it? Of course, it's all of the above. It's exactly as you know, pleased to be doing other stuff, excited for what we're working on now, super excited. Of course, letting go of something I worked on it one way or another for like 20 odd years, and wrote on them for the last 10 or 11 that came out, wrote all of them, or, lead writer on all of them, whatever it was. So of course, letting go of that is a big change and a lot and sad in a way, because it was, each of the games was a kind of standalone story. It's not quite the same as I think probably it would be in some ways sadder if someone continued on Red Dead, because it was a cohesive 2-game arc. That might be more sad to hear someone working on that, but again, that will probably happen too. I don't own the IP. That was the sort of part of the deal. It's a privilege to work on stuff, but you don't necessarily own it.
And this is the part of the quote that I want everyone to focus on when it comes to Red Dead Redemption 3. As far as I'm concerned, that means that Red Dead Redemption 3 is not in production in any way. I think that the tone in the way that he said that has made it clear that as far as he knows, that is not something that is in process. He says if they were to be working on Red Dead Redemption 3, and they could. That doesn't sound like a game that's coming anytime soon. I also think Rockstar, if they're smart, would be hesitant to approach the Red Dead franchise again, given how truly masterful Red Dead Redemption 2 was executed. Taking on a third one would mean finding some other angle to tackle in that series, and I think that would be a lot harder to do than in Grand Theft Auto. Let's move on to some fun, huge Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption lore questions that we finally have answers to. One of the most mysterious characters in all of these games is the Strange Man, and Dan Houser breaks down in detail exactly how and why the Strange Man was conceived. He was actually a late game addition that allowed the player to interact with a touchstone throughout the story as John Marston, continuing to check in with this omnipotent, omniscient kind of character that was witness to everything that John did in the game. This helped fill out the world that was basically, as Dan describes it, a cowboy riding a horse through the desert, a game that needed color and background. Dan Houser officially confirmed that the Cut Trevor DLC story missions as a secret agent are, in fact, as we've always known, very much legitimate and unfortunately got scrapped in place of Grand Theft Auto Online content. Story DLC in general was a pretty great topic in this interview, as Dan went on to talk about, as many fans do, how much he loves story-driven DLC, appreciating the episodes from Liberty City, Undead Nightmare, and other add-ons that he was very passionate about. And it's clear that if everything was solely up to Dan Houser, we would have gotten a lot more story DLC over the years. Finally, Gavin, a famous character or non-character from Red Dead Redemption 2, finally had their backstory revealed. Since 2018, fans have theorized that this character wandering around in Red Dead Redemption 2 looking for someone named Gavin might have a split personality or sociopathic tendencies, that they murdered Gavin. Dan finally laid all of these rumors to rest, saying that he simply thought it was funny that a guy would be wandering around looking for someone named Gavin, and that the name was particularly funny in a British accent. He did mention that they debated internally whether or not in the future game to reveal that Gavin had abandoned this guy or that he had been killed. But one thing's for sure, Gavin is not made up. He's definitely a real character that existed at some point. Case closed. You're probably going to see this interview chopped up a million different times by all the big gaming sites, but I wanted to stay up late on Halloween, Friday night, and get this video out for you so that you can digest it first thing Saturday morning or whenever you're watching this. It's an important moment for me to take out here and say that you've also found Vinewood Public Access, the #1 fan-created GTA talk radio station. That's right. My name is Rob Morris. I'm an American screenwriter and comedian, TV producer, and I made my own GTA talk radio station. It's kind of like Chatterbox FM from GTA 3. So if you like that, go find the other videos on this channel. They're really funny. So that's it. If you want the full 2 hour and 45-minute video with Dan Houser talking to Lex Fridman, go watch it on Lex's page. Support the original. In fact, go over now, drop a like, and support that guy, because we owe a debt to Dan and Lex for everything that they've done, and specifically for this conversation, which was so enlightening. And if you're a writer or creative, content creator, anything like this, I absolutely recommend that you go and digest the entire episode. There are so many great details about how these worlds were conceived that I personally was absolutely nerding out about. Dan's experience being an immigrant in New York, leading to Nico's story in GTA 4 as a Serbian immigrant in Liberty City. There are countless parallels to Dan's life and experience that he shares in this interview, and they should not be missed. One thing that was absolutely not discussed on this podcast at all, almost as though it had been agreed upon ahead of time not to be discussed, is the explicit reason of why Dan Houser left Rockstar. So if you're looking for that or what his current relationship is like with Sam, you will not find it in this interview. It doesn't even kind of come up. Drop a comment down below if you think I missed anything. And if you think Lex missed anything in his interview with Dan, drop that down below. We want to know. Hope you enjoyed that video. I tried to keep it tight, if you know what I mean. Welcome to Vinewood Public Access. My name's Rob Morris. Stick around. All right, enough of that. What's up? Oh my God, thank you for watching that video. That was so fucking cool. Really cool of you. You're like a really cool person. Check out Vinewood Public Access, the #1 fan-created GTA Talk radio station. I made it. It's hilarious. It's good to put on while you play the game. It's good to put on while you're streaming. It's great to put on while you do rideshare in your local city as the economy collapses around you. So put it on for that. Your riders, and they're going to love it.